What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back for another episode for you. A special Halloween-themed episode for you, in fact. We start off by taking a look at the World Series, how that's unfolding between the Dodgers and the Rays as we prepare for a win or go home Game 6 for Tampa Bay. Then we move over to Yas Island as we break down UFC 254 and debate if Khabib Nurmegomedov is the greatest UFC fighter of all time. Finally, we break down what was a wild weekend for the NFL and look ahead for the trade deadline to preview which teams will be buyers and sellers at the November 3rd deadline. All that and much more coming your way right now. What is going on, Nick? How's it going? It was a crazy weekend for sports. We got to see it together, but so many things going on.
Yeah, there was a lot going on this weekend. It seemed like every sport was playing pretty much, and we were busy the entire time. There was no downtime this weekend, but this is the type of weekend I enjoy. This is what I live for. This is what I love to do, and there's nothing like just action-packed sports one after another. It's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, for sports fans like us, for the people who watch this show, like, we couldn't get enough. I mean, breaking news left and right, constant action on the screen. There was literally nothing you could turn away from and say, oh my God, I wish I had more, because everything just kept coming and coming and coming. But I want to start off with baseball, right? Because we are almost at the end. So at the filming of this show, we are pre-Game 6, right? We are getting ready for a win or go home for the Rays. My early prediction was that the Dodgers would win in 6. So for me, I have the Dodgers winning tonight, and I'm going to go on the assumption that they do. What have you seen from the Rays that gives you hope that your prediction of them going to Game 7 and winning in Game 7 can come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that this series has gone the way it has. It's been very interesting. I thought, and I said this last week, if the Rays didn't win Games 1 and 2, I thought this was a done series. I thought that they would probably be swept or it'd be done in Game 5, but the Rays are an interesting team. They don't go away. They don't go away easy, at least. And
right.
They're doing everything possible to win. I've never seen such a resilient team before. Their willingness to just make plays that normally you wouldn't be. They're just saying, "Hey, we don't care. We're lucky to be here in the first place. Let's just risk it. Let's just do what we have to if we want to win." And it's really throwing the Dodgers for a loop in some cases where they're making bad plays. They're not thinking like themselves. They're not playing like themselves. And so it's definitely led them to a lot of runs scored and some victories, but it's also led to some missed points. So it's paid off for them for the most part, because there was a huge Game 4 that could have gone either way, and at the very end, the Rays took it back. So that was a huge game for the Rays in this series, and then they dropped Game 5. It was a close one too. I mean, the Rays definitely made a push, and the one thing I keep going back to is Margot's failed attempt to steal home. And I just I understood where he was coming from because of Kershaw's long windup, and he thought he had the opportunity, but that's just one of those cases where it's never a good idea unless you are one of the fastest players in the sport. I wouldn't even think about it. Or the sneakiest. Right. And he was trying to be sneaky, but Margot is a pretty big guy, and
that's not somebody that's going to be tiptoeing around, maybe in the kitchen late at night, but that's about it.
Yeah, Kershaw saw that Mack truck in his blind side, and he took advantage of it. But that was just one of those cases where they're gonna risk it. That's one where they're gonna say, We're lucky to be here. We're gonna take advantage of it. And hey, maybe if Kershaw was caught off guard, he would have thrown that ball away and to the back of the behind the catcher, and they would have gotten another run. Now they still would
Or
have
maybe
been
he doesn't react fast enough and they don't even get the throw over. I
exactly.
mean, so many things. Maybe he causes a balk, right? And the runner advances anyway, so it wouldn't matter. I mean, there's so many things. Um, I I got to give it credit to the Rays. I mean, they are a scrappy team, and you know what's crazy? This reminds me of a series that we just saw not too long ago versus the Lakers versus the Heat. I mean, you're talking about California versus Florida once again, but I mean the Heat were lucky to be there. The Rays are lucky to be there. You have the title favorites in the Lakers and the Dodgers, and you know that they're kind of getting stunned left and right, but they're playing their once they get back on track and play their brand of ball. It just seems like their talent and their just sheer drive to win is just going to overmatch the competition that they have right now.
Yeah, they're trying their hardest. And the Dodgers, you know what? There really aren't many people rooting for them outside of the Los Angeles area or California, if you want to give them that, because everybody likes the underdog story, and this is one of those underdog stories where, you can't not root for the Rays. It's just you're pushing for them. This is something that it was out of the realm of possibility before the playoffs started, and now we're here. So
Right.
it's unbelievable. I really hope this goes to a game 7. It's going to depend, and unfortunately, we're recording before game 6 starts, before they throw the first pitch out. I want to say the Rays are going to go to game 7. They're going to force a game 7. They're going to take the Dodgers all the way and force them to play their best ball throughout the rest of the series. So I'll take I'm gonna take the Rays in 7. I'm gonna take the Rays in 7.
Still,
Yeah,
yeah,
I can't.
I just
Well, I
don't see
can't.
it.
I can't.
don't see it.
I can't take the Dodgers. I can't take the Dodgers.
No, you can.
No.
You can come over to the smart side.
No, no,
You
no,
know,
no.
it used to be the dark side. It's now the smart side.
No.
Because the factor means that when you look at this roster up and down, and you have the second best player in Major League Baseball leading off your batting order, you always have a shot to win and should be the favorites. And they are, for good reason. On top of the fact that they have a very deep rotation, their bullpen is very deep. They've been to this moment before. They know what they need to do. The Rays are kind of just playing backyard bullshit ball, and now this is what they're kind of in a league that they're not too familiar with, and they're just hoping to skate by. I don't think it's going to work out for them. It worked out a couple of times, but you can only fool somebody so many times.
So what do you have? You have the Dodgers in 6 or 7?
Yeah. No, 6.
So
like
they're
I
taking
said.
it tonight. Okay.
Yeah, no, of course, because that was my original prediction. I knew that the Dodgers would give up one and the Rays would take one. So those were the two games I was giving up, and the Dodgers gave one up in Game 4, and the Rays took one in the early part of the series. So that was the two games. The Dodgers are not playing games. They've been here too many times to see it slip through their fingers. Almost like the Atlanta Falcons in the fourth quarter. They are just tired of it. They are ready to fucking hammer it home. They're ready to go, okay? And I can't imagine that Dave Roberts and this crew, and you're talking about Mookie Betts, who's actually won it all before. This team, they're not playing games. They're ready to bring it home. They're holding hardware tonight.
If Mookie Betts wasn't a Dodger, would you be rooting for them?
Yes, because I'm a Red Sox fan, and the Rays are in the division. If any time that
I'm a
somebody
Yankee
in my
fan, and the Rays are in the division.
yeah, well, I didn't say you were smart.
Oh.
I just said that the fact remains that the Rays are in the division. I don't want to see them succeed. Even though they are the underdog, I can't say that I don't want to see. The Dodgers have been there so many times, and they're not unlikable. There's nothing to not like about the Dodgers. They don't have a villain. It's hard in baseball in general because you don't see too many emotions as it is. But I will say that they've taken a lot of Red Sox players, and I've grown keen on the Dodgers over the last few years. So
So we
and
should
does
be ready for you to hop on that bandwagon about 2 to 3
no
years.
shot.
Okay.
No shot.
Okay.
My socks are still red. That's for damn sure. They will never change color.
Well, you don't want to call me smart or anything, but just know that Black Panther could take Buzz Lightyear every single time.
No shot. I'll fly away.
You'll fly away. My big paws are gonna knock down your little toy.
Oh God. Well, you know who else got knocked down? A lot of goddamn people at UFC 254. There were so many good fights, and it was crazy. And we said this all throughout Saturday. It was weird.
It was
weird to have the early prelims starting at 10 a.m. Then the prelims started at, I believe it was like noon or something like that. And
It was like
then the
noon.
main card started at 2.
Yeah.
I was like, I barely woke up and we're already watching UFC fights. I'm like, this is kind of fun, but at the same time, like, I'm not moving from here the rest of the day.
Yeah.
With that being said, there were amazing fights, but I do want to focus on 2 specifically. And the first one I want to focus on was the Whitaker over Cannonier fight.
Yeah.
Holy shit. That was just, I mean, to be clear, I thought Cannonier had it, especially the way Israel Adesanya was speaking about
You're
Cannonier.
talking about pre-fight. You thought Cannonier had it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, not during the fight, but
okay.
like going into it. Yeah, no. Going into it, I was like, okay, Cannonier's got this. He's just got to get through Whitaker, and then all of a sudden he's going to he's going to be the title contender for Israel Adesanya because he had the backing of Adesanya. And for me, when you're a UFC champion, when you're a fighting champion, you usually can recognize greatness in others, and I just didn't see greatness in Mr. Cannonier. I just didn't.
My theory on that is Adesanya put out Cannonier's name to hype him up because he'd rather face Cannonier than face Whitaker again. He knows that Whitaker can take him if they fight again, or has at least a really good chance at beating him.
Has what it takes to beat
Adesanya has not faced an opponent twice yet. All right, so if you get tape on him and you have fought against him already, maybe you've seen something that you can go back to camp and you'll be able to fix and correct, and you'll be able to get him to the ground. I mean, that's the hardest thing, is getting Adesanya down. He is extremely hard to get advantage of, but Robert Whitaker...
Yeah, his takedown defense is crazy.
Robert Whitaker is one of the best fighters, and at the middleweight division, he dominated for so long, and then he lost one fight to Israel Adesanya in New Zealand. They're both New Zealanders, and it was just, the momentum was all on Izzy's side. Now let's see this fight on Fight Island or without a crowd. Let's see how Izzy does against
even in
Whitaker.
Vegas. Let's see it at the Apex Center.
Yeah, but either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, that would be interesting. Put him back in the smaller cage. You're going to see another big striking match between the two. So it'll be interesting to see how both of them handle fighting each other again, because it's clear cut. They've already named Robert Whitaker the number 1 contender. He's going to be fighting Izzy at some point next year, and it's probably going to be a test. This is if Israel's Adesanya can beat Whitaker again, then I don't think there's anybody else in the division that can take him. But I think this is going to be a true challenge for Israel Adesanya. I think this is the time that Robert Whitaker takes back the title and takes hold of the middleweight division again. I think he is just more experienced. I think he's a better fighter. I think Adesanya has a little bit more to learn. And I think Whitaker's experience is just going to play a huge factor.
It's interesting to me because Adesanya reminds me not in the cage, but just persona wise, he reminds me a lot of Conor McGregor, right? They have very big personalities. They talk the talk and they can walk the walk. I think nobody has been able to humble Israel Adesanya forever. And not that they have to necessarily, but like you said, he's never faced somebody twice. He's never had somebody learn some information and then be able to respond. It'll be interesting to see because I watched that Whitaker Adesanya fight, and I see what everyone else sees. I see that Whitaker definitely had the shot there to take it home, and he didn't. But we're I'm looking forward to it because the UFC, they have done an amazing job with all of these cards, with all of these fights. Robert Whitaker beating Cannonier was just, I mean, it was incredible. Just for the simple fact that what I expected and what I saw were completely different, and yet I still wasn't surprised because I expect greatness from both sides based on the cards that we're getting every single, I guess, month.
Now, as great as the UFC has been doing this year, I think what's really hurt them the most are these fighters retiring early. I know it started with Cejudo earlier this year, and we just got the latest victim to retirement, unfortunately.
Oh. My skin, I still have goosebumps talking about it. But obviously, the highlight of the night was Khabib Nurmegomedov defeating Justin Gaethje, and in incredible fashion, mind you, with the triangle chokehold in the second round to really just hammer it home, and then all of a sudden, you know. We'll get into the details, but to watch Khabib go to the center of the octagon and just absolutely break down, absolutely humanizes somebody you just saw destroy another human. It was incredible to watch. And then, to hear him, we all dropped our jaws and then just stared at each other like, what are we listening to? Khabib goes out of the UFC, out of MMA, at a record of 29-0, 13-0 in the UFC, defending his title. He has beaten every single person in his division and then some. It's a major loss. I can't imagine what Dana White is feeling, what any of these guys, but I have to respect the decision because you're talking about a man who fought with his father. His father was his coach, obviously. And, that we don't need to rehash their history, but, everything that happened with COVID and, him battling COVID and then ultimately succumbing to the virus. And then, he had to make good on his promise. He wanted to defend his title one more time. He wanted to make his father proud. And then he made a promise to his mom and said, "This is it. I'm done fighting after this. I can't do it without him." He was the inspiration. He was his coach. He was everything to him. And here we are. We're sitting there on Saturday, and as dominant as Khabib is, he is leaving ultimately at the prime of his career.
Yeah, and what Khabib has done for the sport can never be repaid. What he has done is bigger than what Conor McGregor has done for the sport. Khabib doesn't need to talk the talk. He just does it. He just goes out there every single time and he doesn't disappoint. He is going to maul everybody in front of him, and you know what you're getting. You're going to get a great fight. And this was by far his toughest opponent in Justin Gaethje. And Justin Gaethje in the first round was doing a great job of staying with him, hitting him some nice left hooks, doing what he was doing against Tony Ferguson. And then it just seemed like Khabib went back to his corner and took over. He was just like, all right, we're not going to just, keep moving around the ring, throwing some jabs at each other. I'm going to go take you down. I'm going to take my signature double leg takedown and just smother you. He got to that full mount position and just didn't let go. Justin Gaethje was flat on his back. He was trying to get out of it, but like everybody says about Khabib, he is so strong. He has a strength that it's an unteachable
strength. It's a natural strength.
I don't know. Yeah, because you look at him, you're like, oh, he looks like every other 155 pounder. but
Right.
he's not. He is built so differently from everybody else, and his will to just break you is unmatched. So even Gaethje after the fight was like, I couldn't have imagined him being that strong. Like he just completely took over, and
Yeah.
that's what led to. I mean, that triangle choke. It didn't, to me, it didn't look like it was all the way in there, and then it still knocked Justin Gaethje out. Like his arms went limp. He was out.
Well, so that's the thing is that I mean we saw him tapping, and I don't know what Jason Herzog was looking for,
I'm not.
but
I'm not going to
all I
blame
see is
Herzog.
this. I see this, then I see this, and then I see this, and I was like, that man's asleep.
Well,
That fight needed to be called the first time he tapped.
I'm not.
So
I don't think it's not a bad stoppage. That was not a bad stoppage
it wasn't a
at
bad
all.
stoppage, but I mean he obviously missed the taps.
Well, the thing was, what Justin was kind of tapping the head, which also made it look like he was feeling around for the head to know where he was feeling for. Because in that triangle choke, his eyes were covered by Khabib. So you don't know if he's actually tapping or if he's trying to feel for something, and that's where the misconfusion came from.
Right.
And that's why Jason was like, "Wait, was that a tap?" Felt for the arm. The arm was limp, so he called it, and that's exactly what you
I
need
get
to
that.
do.
And I'm not throwing any blame or any like I'm not criticizing Jason Herzog. He's obviously one of the best there is at what he does. But I want to say that I mean if you go back and watch the fight, and trust me, it won't take you very long, but we saw a little glimpse of it in the first round where Khabib took down oh my god, I almost said Justin Gaethje, and he brought him down and tried to get the triangle then, but he just couldn't lock it in. So I think him and his coaches had realized that there was a way to get him down on the ground, and then he knew that he could if he could lock it in, it was going to be over. And I if you watch the fight, if you didn't watch it, the insane control of his body and his movement. He gets Gaethje to the ground, and then as he heads to the ground himself, he simultaneously gets on top of Gaethje's back and or sorry, his front, and full mounts him. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, but all in one fell swoop in one motion. It was almost like you couldn't have written it any better. There's no way to teach what he just did and have everybody do that every single time. It just happened so perfectly for him. And then obviously he brought it home with the triangle choke. Um, the debate will go on, but it's hard to find anybody who is better pound for pound.
You know, Khabib alluded to it in the pre-fight press conference where he said Dagestan wrestling is much different than American wrestling, so you can't really compare the two. And he showed
Because he
why.
wrestled a goddamn bear.
Yes, that infamous clip will forever live on in Khabib's legacy as a child wrestling a small bear. But those are
different.
the types of things that his father put him through that helped him get to where he is today. It's all attributed to what his father did as a coach and what he learned in his gym. So
Yeah.
you've got to commend Khabib and his coaches and his father for everything they put together in Khabib. He truly is the pound for pound best, and I think that John Jones is gotta prove himself as a heavyweight now if he wants to be brought back into that conversation.
See, that's where we disagree because as dominant as Khabib was, right? You can't tell me that John Jones wasn't and isn't as dominant as he was because we're taking the hard part and the part that we're probably going to debate the most frivolously is the fact that Khabib had 13 UFC fights.
Hmm.
John Jones had 11 title defenses. Those are very different. You're talking from bottom all the way to the top 13-0. John Jones 11 title defenses for people who are number one contenders in that weight class looking to take the hardware away from you. I mean, the aspect of those fights are completely different.
You can't exactly look at it like that, because John Jones, when he first came into the UFC, he was pushed to the top right away. It was his either second or third fight in the UFC was a championship fight, and that's when he took the light heavyweight championship. And every fight from then on was a title defense. It had to be. So Khabib didn't have the same experience. He worked his way up, and it was his probably fifth or sixth fight in the UFC that was his first championship fight, and he's only had 6 or 7 chances at defending his title. So he was only given so many chances. And if you look at the age discrepancy, John Jones is an older opponent. Khabib came into the UFC at an older age than when John Jones did. So you've got to factor all that in. I don't think you can really just look at what they have done, like how many championship fights they have had and how many title defenses they have had. But even if we break it down by round, you can only say that Khabib has lost 1, maybe 2 rounds in his entire career. Rounds, not fights, rounds.
Right.
He has won almost every single one. You can't say that for John Jones. He pretty much lost to Dominic Reyes in February of this year. We can't forget that he pretty much left the light heavyweight division, so he didn't have to fight Reyes or Jan Blachowicz again. He didn't want to face that competition, and he wanted to. Now that DC is retired, he felt like he could move up to the heavyweight division and compete with those guys.
I don't necessarily believe that it was to run away from Jan Blachowicz and Dominic Reyes. I think it was more so that he had been there and done it before, and now he's trying to move up and prove himself at another weight class. Because here's the thing: if John Jones is able to be as dominant as he was at light heavyweight, as that he wants to be at heavyweight, then I mean, is there really even a conversation here? Because the fact remains that if you can do the same thing in 2 different weight classes, and if he can become the heavyweight champion, well, we're talking about a different stratosphere, and it sucks because I'm gonna liken this to football a little bit. Everybody knows that the greatest running back is probably Emmitt Smith, right? We talk about Emmitt Smith, or we talk about whoever you want to insert, right? You got to throw Bo Jackson in there just in the conversation, and I think that's who Khabib is. I think Khabib is Bo Jackson. They left so much on the table. They left so much to still be wanted from the fans, and that we're not going to be able to see. Again, he's leaving in the prime of his career. He's leaving at a time when he could continue to dominate in the UFC, but we're never going to see it. If you don't want to take the running backs, take the wide receivers. Everybody regards Jerry Rice as the best receiver ever. Calvin Johnson was well on his way to possibly taking over that title. It's the same exact thing. Just because the longevity wasn't there, we're not going to be able to have a true debate about it. I just think that John Jones, pound for pound, if he can show us what he did in the light heavyweight, if he can do that at heavyweight, I think this conversation is all but closed.
Yeah, I mean, you had it right with the running back comparison, except probably instead of Bo Jackson, it's Barry Sanders, just because Bo had that injury, and that's what caused the downfall of his career. But anyway, you're right. It's going to be an argument for a very long time, and Khabib's last wish after he successfully defended his title against Gaethje was that he retire as the number 1 pound for pound fighter, and I think that's a reasonable, something that's very reasonable that can be granted to him. I don't see why he can't be named the pound for pound best, and John Jones go out, win the heavyweight title, and then be named the pound for pound best once again.
Yeah, if you were to if you were to ask me right now, I think I'd have to go Khabib, but I still reserve the right to change that aspect because John Jones is still competing.
Well, of
Because John
course.
Jones is still doing what Khabib is walking away from. And that's what I'm saying is it's so tough to to judge these two people when they could never face off, so you're it's apples and oranges. But you're taking the lightweight, right? And you're taking light heavyweight, completely different fight styles, completely different opponents, completely different depth classes. It's just there's so much to weigh in here. So if he wants to walk away as the number one pound for pound UFC fighter, I'm willing to grant that to him. But as soon as John Jones starts dominating in the heavyweight class, I think that again it switches, and then the conversation becomes closed, and Khabib will probably just forever remain at number two.
It'll be something we'll have to wait and watch for because we still don't know when John Jones is going to be fighting next, and it's definitely not going to be for the championship. Francis Ngannou is already, become he's the number one contender. We all know that. So John Jones has got a couple fights before he's fighting for a title. So it's going to be some time till we have a more clear idea of who is the better pound for pound fighter. But I
Yeah.
think as it stands, we've got to declare Khabib the number one pound for pound fighter.
Yeah, for sure. But uh, when we talk about UFC, we have so much more to watch, so much more happening that's going to happen in the future. I mean, we're looking forward to the next few cards, the next few fight nights. We're going to be a part of those, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Make sure that you guys check us out on social media. Follow our YouTube. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Listen, we're looking at over 60% of you who watch our videos are not subscribed. I don't know what the hell y'all are doing. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, get notified every single time that we upload a video, because the fact remains is that when we talk about this shit, you guys learn a lot. So I don't know what you're doing. Hit the subscribe button now. Thank you. With that being said, we're going to move over to the NFL, which was insane. Just absolutely insane. And there's so many things happening. But before we get into
Busy
like what
time.
actually, yeah, what before we get into what actually happened, in 1 week from today, specifically 1 week from the filming of today, 4 o'clock, November 3rd, also election day. Make sure y'all go out and vote. Vote. Make sure you perform your civic duty. We also have the trade deadline the same day for the NFL. I mean, I feel like Roger Goodell wasn't thinking about it too well when he planned this, but nonetheless, that's where we stand. And we have some trade rumors that are going around. We want to talk about some buyers. We want to talk about some sellers. We have a list of names that y'all should be watching that you guys need to take notice of, and then possibly take a look and see if you agree where we think that these players will end up if they get moved at all. And we'll tell you whether we think they're going to get moved. So let's start off. It's not a very long list, but the first and foremost, we look at Jets quarterback Sam Darnold. It looks like they're in line for the number one overall pick. Obviously, that they're tanking for Trevor, assuming that he comes out of Clemson this year. News came out of Clemson, South Carolina today that possibly might want to stay in school. He's going to take it, in stride and kind of decide. But you also have Trey Lance out of North Dakota State and Justin Fields out of Ohio State, and those guys will most likely be in the draft. So with that being said, the Jets will be looking to make a change at quarterback. They're going to probably bring in a new head coach so they can make those decisions. But Sam Darnold on his way out of New York. Nick, where do you see the best fits here? Do you think he gets moved?
Unfortunately, I don't see Sam Darnold getting moved at the deadline. And it's very upsetting for Sam Darnold fans. And it's upsetting for Jets fans because you want to have that clear path ready to go for Trevor Lawrence. And you don't want this to be a conversation in the offseason, because I think if there is a clear line for Trevor Lawrence to take over this team, he's more likely to come to the NFL. I don't think he wants to come into the NFL and be competing for his job against Sam Darnold. Not saying that he wouldn't win the job, but I just think that's not a good spot to be putting a rookie quarterback. And, Sam Darnold has so much talent that's being wasted that it would make a lot of sense to trade him. I think you can get more trade value for him now than you can in the off season.
For sure.
But that's just not how the Jets organization has run themselves over the last few years, especially with Joe Douglas and Adam Gase. So I don't see him getting moved, but if there's any teams that are going to pursue him, it's definitely going to be the Cleveland Browns. I don't care how good Baker was last week. It's 1 week. You have the Indianapolis Colts, who have Phillip Rivers, who's doing okay, but he looks terrible out there. He just physically looks terrible out there. And then you have the Chicago Bears, and we saw them last night in one of the most boring games I've ever seen. And the Bears offense is just struggling because they have the most mediocre quarterbacks on their roster. So those three teams should really be looking to trade for Sam Darnold now, while they're all three teams are going to the playoffs. They will be in the playoffs. So they need to pick up Sam Darnold. They need to trade for Sam Darnold if they want to make it past the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with all of those sentiments. Baker Mayfield, yeah, you talk about somebody who's hot and cold and can't decide what he's going to be until it's game day. I don't even know if you can even say that, because he started the game 0 for 5. 0 for 5 and then went incompletionless the rest of the way, or almost the rest of the way.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah, so I think Baker was just that ship has sailed. I think he's got to go. The Colts and the Bears definitely make a whole hell of a lot of sense. The Colts have a defense that is holding this team up, as does Chicago. The Colts, they need to utilize their draft picks that they have. They need to utilize those to bring weapons around their new quarterback. So if they don't have to focus on bringing in a quarterback, and they can swing a deal for Sam Darnold, or fix some stuff on the back end of the defense at corner, maybe. I think that's where they're best suited to really start to finish this rebuild after the post Peyton Manning, post Andrew Luck era of the Indianapolis Colts. And again, as Chicago has learned, Mitchell Trubisky is not the guy. Big Dick Nick Foles ain't it either. As much as he led Philadelphia to the only win they'll ever talk about for the next 50 years. He's just not it. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut, and he is the current version of Brock Osweiler. He was able to do something really well in the postseason and got paid millions and millions and millions of dollars for it. He just ain't it. So I think that the Colts and the Bears make the most sense for me. The Browns as an organization are probably not ready to give up on Baker Mayfield, even though we all believe that they should. But the Colts and the Bears definitely, for me, are the front runners. Over to our sorry-ass team, the New England Patriots. It looks like, as much as I love him as our starting quarterback, Cam Newton could be on his way out. I think he's done enough to showcase his ability to throw for a contending team. He's on a 1-year deal, and we're looking at certain teams that need a quarterback, and specifically the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think they're going to ride the rest of the season with Ben DiNucci at quarterback after Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, who took over for Dak Prescott, got injured on a very egregious play.
Decapitated.
I forgot who it was. The linebacker.
John Bostic.
God. He's not a dirty player. I don't want to rake his name through the mud.
We're not going to get into it too much, but I didn't think it was a dirty play. I didn't think
you don't think he should have been ejected?
I'm fine with the ejection, but I don't think it's a dirty play, and he's definitely not a dirty player.
I don't think he. No. I don't think he meant harm, but you still can't hit a quarterback who's sliding. I don't care
Right.
what your
And
argument is. Once you see that quarterback go down, I don't care if you have to leap over him. Yeah, you can change your just dive to the side of him, whatever. As soon as you see him go into that sliding motion, get away from him.
it's not
Don't
like
hit him in the head.
it's not like Andy Dalton was going to bring that team back. I mean, they had already scored their only 3 points of the game, and they were already down by I think 21 at the time. So the game was all but over at that point, and Ben DiNucci just came in to finish it out.
Yeah. But I believe that Cam Newton, if he were able to come into that Mike McCarthy offense and do that vertical passing game that he would have with Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz at tight end, and Ezekiel Elliott running behind him, that is quite the dynamic threat that you got going there. On top of the fact that Mike McCarthy's never really had a running type of quarterback, and he is the offensive guru who would be able to utilize him better than Josh McDaniels has to this point. So if now I'm gonna put these odds at close to zero. I don't think the Patriots trade Cam Newton. I don't think they're looking to trade him. But I do believe that if they do, the Cowboys or the Bears are the best suitors for him at this current state.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I don't see the Patriots trading him until after week eight's game. If the Patriots get blown out against Buffalo in Buffalo, then I think this is it. Bill's going to say, all right, we're going to give up on the season. We're going to go try to get as good of a pick as possible, probably trade up a few spots and try to grab one of the top quarterbacks in the draft and rock with them. And if we have to go into next season playing Jarrett Stidham for half the season before the rookie takes over, so be it. But I think Bill is starting to realize the situation he's in. All the players that opted out, the players that left in free agency, the players that retired, they're all impacting this team a lot more than he thought. And he's gonna have to realize soon that this team is going nowhere fast, and it's time to offload some of these big contract and big names.
Yeah, for sure. And that would bring us to the other side of the ball for the Patriots and Stephon Gilmore. Big news coming out of New England today that Stephon Gilmore was actually the topic of trade conversations back in March, April, and in August. So teams definitely calling about Stephon Gilmore. We don't know from the Patriots side of things exactly what, if other teams were just calling about him or if they were actually fielding those offers and trying to work out a deal. Obviously, he's still in New England and he's still the number one corner for the team. But needless to say that Bill Belichick and Nick Caserio might be getting together and saying, as good as he is, this is the time that we need to capitalize on his trade value, possibly get a first, maybe 2 first-round picks for him, and then, like you said, maybe go up in the draft. Because if you trade Cam Newton's maybe getting you a 5th or a 6th round pick, maybe. Stephon Gilmore, he's giving you at least a 1st round pick, possibly 2 first-round picks. You can look for almost the same type of deal that Jalen Ramsey got. The only thing is that Stephon Gilmore is considerably older than Jalen Ramsey. And even though he's coming off the Defensive Player of the Year season, he's struggled a little bit this year as well. So I think teams are going to try to capitalize on that. So if I had to look at this, I'd put this at a 45% chance that the Patriots move on from Stephon Gilmore. And I would say that the haul would be a 1st and maybe a 3rd for him.
So I actually mentioned to you this offseason that I felt the Patriots would try to move on from him next season in his last year before the trade deadline to try to recoup something, because you're not going to go pay a 31-year-old cornerback elite money, even though he's playing at an elite level. He's just
Right.
No one at that age is worth that money, especially when you need to be fast. So this would be the perfect opportunity while the team is going to go through a rebuild, some sort of a rebuild. You're going to need to just offload these big contracts. No need to be paying guys like Stephon Gilmore this money, and no reason for Stephon Gilmore to have to sit through a rebuild towards the end of his career. He could go to a contender that needs a cornerback, and there's a bunch of them. Cleveland and Dallas could definitely use him. These are teams would love to
Dallas
have him.
can't pay his money.
Well, that's the thing.
problem.
Dallas would have to restructure a lot of deals, and yes, they just unloaded Everson Griffin, so they made some cap space there. Cleveland would make the most sense because I believe they have the most cap space, over $30 million. You only have to pay Stephon Gilmore about $10 to $12 million for the rest of the season, so this would be a great spot for him. Where they're struggling is with their defensive backs. They've been struggling since Grant Delpit tore his ACL in the leading up to the season opener, and they've been getting crushed. I mean, Joe Burrow just threw for 400 yards on this defense. Yeah. If they can,
Denzel Ward's done a really good job, but it's the other side of the field that they're just teeing off on. So if you can put Denzel Ward as your 2 and Stephon as your 1, that is a very good dynamic duo that you have for the next year and a half.
Absolutely. So there are some definite teams out there, and Cleveland has always been a team Bill is traded with. We've traded a lot with Cleveland over the years, so it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of teams out there that could utilize the services of one Stephon Gilmore. Like I said, I put the trade odds for him at about 45%.
I'd agree with that. I'd probably even boost a little bit, maybe like 55-60%. I think it's more than likely that he gets
more
traded.
likely than not.
More likely than not. Tom Brady's gone. I don't care about those words anymore.
Okay, just a few more. Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks for the Houston Texans. It's rumored that possibly one of these guys is going to be gone. If you look at their statistics and their production, Brandon Cooks has been the much more productive wide receiver ever since Bill O'Brien has left. If you look at everything that he's done, he's averaged about 9 catches per game. He's averaging double-digit targets, and then on top of that, he's averaging about 80 yards and a touchdown since Bill O'Brien has left. With that being said, he's got the higher trade value. Will Fuller does not, even though Will Fuller is the guy that's not doing anything. They might want to keep him because they want to recoup some of the draft picks that Bill O'Brien, the GM, just discarded, traded away, threw in the trash, whatever you want to call them. But the fact remains that the Houston Texans are in a very, very, very poor position as far as their team, because they're in desperate need of a retooling, a rebuild around Deshaun Watson. They don't have draft picks. I mean, they don't have draft picks and they don't have cap space. I don't understand what they're going to be able to do. I think that not during this trade deadline and not even in the next offseason, but Deshaun Watson might become available before his contract is up, and I think that'll be something to watch. But to come back to the wide receivers, I think Brandon Cooks is more likely to get moved because of his trade value, even though he's the more productive wide receiver.
I mean, to think this guy went from the Saints to the Patriots for a 1, from the Patriots to the Rams for a 1, from the Rams to the Texans for a 2. Is he still worth a 2? Probably not. So what's a team going to pay for him? A 4? A 5? Yeah, I mean, that's around what you're going to get for him. Houston is not going to recoup one of these.
But what are you paying for Will Fuller?
No, a 2. Will Fuller is an elite wide receiver when healthy. He needs to stay healthy.
When healthy. Brackets.
I think that he's proven that he's able to do it. He's more than capable, and there's plenty of teams out there that could use his services. I mean, hey, Cleveland just lost OBJ for the season, so maybe they would be looking to go grab him, or Seattle lost out on Antonio Brown. Maybe go grab him. I mean,
well, they're expected to get Josh Gordon back relatively soon as Roger Goodell figures out which way his pen works. But I mean, Will Fuller's the wide receiver 4 in Houston, so it's beyond me.
What are you talking about? He's the wide receiver 1.
Kenny Stills.
Kenny Stills is the wide receiver 3 or 4. No, he's the 4. Randall Cobb's the 3. Right. Will Fuller is the number 1 wide receiver on that team. There's no question about that. I don't know the last time you looked at a depth chart, but he has been number 1 since the.
I mean, you can just look at production, but the fact
production, he's been a great wide receiver. He's been a great wide receiver.
I just see them moving on from Brandon Cooks over Will Fuller. I just Will Fuller has been their guy. I don't think he's going to command the trade value that you're giving him credit for, because the when healthy portion is the biggest issue for him.
It could also just be a change of scenery. I mean, how many times have we seen a player go from one team to another and either perform better or stay healthy? It happens all the time. I mean, latest victim, Nelson Aguilar. He's been a stud for Oakland since he left Philly. It just happens that way. Or players just happen to act differently and play differently when in a new atmosphere. So that could definitely help Will Fuller, and that could end his curse of being injured all the time. But Brandon Cooks or Will Fuller, if they're saying one of these has to be moved, I would agree. I think Will Fuller is the guy for Houston. They're going to try to stick with him. Brandon Cooks is the odd man out. So I would think that they would probably try to move on from him. And in which case, I'm not really sure where he fits in. What team would be looking for him? Green Bay. I mean, obviously Green Bay is going to be a team looking for any type of wide receiver that has 2 hands and 2 feet. But
they have a receiver named Marquez Valdez-Scantling that doesn't know how to utilize his feet and his hands at the same exact time. And that, for fantasy owners that have to go against Devontae Adams, I think they're looking for any receiver to come into Green Bay and catch some passes from Aaron Rodgers, because Devontae Adams gets about 84 receptions and 6,000 yards per game. I think that's something around what he averages. So
this will be one to look forward to, look more into, and watch as the deadline approaches. Because if they're saying one's going to be moved, I would expect one to be moved, since they're not playing for anything and they're trying to recoup picks. They don't forget, Miami owns their first and second round picks this year, so they are not going to get any better.
What did they get from trading away arguably the best wide receiver in football? Oh, that's right, a second round pick.
And David Johnson, who's been amazing, right? Amazing.
I told you I hated David Johnson from that point on. He is a shell of himself, and he will never be the same player as he was in his Pro Bowl year. Moving on. Harrison Smith, the massive safety for the Vikings, their run stuffer. He does everything. He's a most feared player. Just his sheer size and athletic ability are unmatched at his position. I think that he definitely will get moved at the trade deadline. They're shopping him actively. They've made teams known that they're shopping him. I think that the haul for him isn't going to be very big, because they're so desperate to get away from him. And they're desperate because they're not going anywhere. Minnesota isn't really competing.
It seems like they've already given up on the season. Danielle Hunter's out for the year. He just had surgery. You just traded away Yannick Ngakoue and lost you went from a second round pick to a third round pick after that whole ordeal played itself out. And now you're looking to trade both your safeties, really. Anthony Harris is also a free agent at the end of this year, and these are 2 Pro Bowl safeties, so there's a lot of spots for them. A lot of teams that need safety help that are contending this year. So I would expect these guys to be moved, and it looks like Vikings are just saying, we're not only giving up in the season, we're going through a rebuild. Kirk Cousins isn't going to be the guy. We messed up by just extending his contract. So while we have him, we're going to have to rebuild.
Yeah, I think that they need to kind of hit a small reset button, because I do believe that they have specific pieces in place. I like their offensive line. Obviously, the 1-2 duo of Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison on top of Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson is really great. I think they need to find a new quarterback. I think that they need to fix that defense. They saw 3 cornerbacks go in the offseason. Obviously, Danielle Hunter go down with an injury, trading for and then away Yannick Ngakoue and losing draft spot in that entire sequence of events. They lost Anthony Barr to injury, their Pro Bowl middle linebacker. So they got decimated across the board, and I think they need to move on from some older veteran players, give them a change of scenery, give them an opportunity to go win somewhere else, and then just kind of hit, like I said, a small, not a rebuild, but just a small reset button.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think it's more than a small reset button. This team has been decimated through the loss of players in the offseason and the lack of ability that Kirk Cousins is missing. You're not going to go anywhere, as we see with Chicago. You're only going to go as far as your quarterback, and that's not looking too good. So
Right.
with that new contract Kirk Cousins just got, I mean, I don't know when they're going to be looking for a new quarterback or when they're going to be looking to draft somebody, but yeah, I don't see them turning this ship around for at least a few years.
It'll be interesting. But another ship that hasn't been turned around in a few years was Atlanta. The Atlanta Falcons look to possibly be maybe looking for a deal for Julio Jones. Arguably, again, a top 5 receiver, top 3 receiver in the NFL. His talent is unmatched. He's obviously older now. Nobody's questioning his production. They're questioning his ability to stay on the field and healthy. With that being said, I think Atlanta will not move on from Julio Jones. I would say that there's about a 25% chance that they move on from Julio Jones, but he has a very large contract, and that I think that's going to be the big deterrent, because when you look at every team for next year, there are many, many teams that are very over the cap because of the $25 million reduction in cap space from this season to next. So I think a lot of teams that would be in on him are going to be hesitant because of the amount of money that he's going to command over the next 3 to possibly 4 seasons.
Yeah, I would agree that I don't think he's going to get traded now. And we heard the rumors as the Atlanta Falcons were losing every single game horribly. And then they won one game, and Arthur Blank was like, yeah, he's not on the trade block. But then they just lost to the Lions at the very last second. And I would expect that Julio Jones is being brought up in some conversations around the league. But again, you brought it up, that price tag of $20 million a season. He signed that 3-year deal, I believe it was before last season. So you still got another year with that contract, plus this a half a year with this.
And then there's an option for a 4th year to extend it.
Yeah, so it's not a good contract, and that's really what's hurting them. I don't expect Julio to be traded before the deadline this year.
No.
I guarantee he'll be traded by the deadline next year.
Yeah, I would assume that it'll be an off-season trade. I think a team that's looking to retool and rebound, and they're looking for a top receiver.
Atlanta's going to have to eat some of this contract at some point. There's no way any team is taking on this full contract, and I think Atlanta will be fine with that. So it's just a matter of...
They're going to have to be, unfortunately.
It's going to take longer than the less than week we have to figure out all the details of that contract, because it's going to be very elaborate.
For sure. And then the final person that we want to talk about, Jets defensive tackle Quinnen Williams. There's a lot of speculation whether Quinnen Williams is part of the fire sale that Joe Douglas is, going through right now. The Jets have been offloading relatively unknown or non-essential pieces. I've seen them trade away a few pieces, got some conditional 6th-round picks and stuff like that, but nothing crazy. But we're looking at certain names like Brian Poole and Quinnen Williams and can't think of the
Jamison
wide receivers.
Crowder.
Thank you, Jamison Crowder. I mean, these are big names that Joe Douglas might want to deal and try to get more ammunition, because it seems like, he's not willing to spend a single dime when it comes to the offseason, but he's willing to do all his homework and do everything properly at the draft. So if he's going to succeed at his job, he's definitely going to have to gather as many draft picks as humanly possible. So with that being said, Quinnen Williams on the block, what do you see as the chances of him being moved, and then where he would fit? and what it would take.
I actually think the chances of Quinn Williams being traded are quite high. This is a guy that a lot of teams have been interested in. They have thrown out their asking price in public, actually, saying that we think he's worth a two. And then Joe Douglas responding saying, I actually think he's worth multiple twos. So now it's time for teams to respond, okay, maybe we're willing to give up multiple twos or a 2 and a 3 and a 4 for this guy. I think that Quinton Williams is extremely talented and can help every defensive line in the league.
He's got 3 more years left on his rookie deal.
Exactly. This is a very young guy with a bright future ahead of him, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen in New York. And this is the time to get him before Adam Gase is gone, before they start retooling this team under a competent head coach. So
depends on who they choose. Could be Freddie Kitchens.
I wouldn't put it past him, but I do. As cheap as Joe
Johnson type of move to make.
As cheap as Joe Douglas is, I think he's a smart guy and won't let any fool just walk into this head coaching position.
Have you met anybody from the Jets organization? Have you seen how they operate? Stephen A can laugh at the Cowboys as much as he wants. We're all missing the simple fact that we should just be laughing at the Jets 24/7.
I think we just feel sorry for the players at this point.
Nah, never feel sorry. But I do believe that you're right. I think Quentin Williams will get moved sooner rather than later. I think they're going to try everything in their power to get something done before the trade deadline. Because again, the Jets are going nowhere fast. Their planes are grounded. They are not going anywhere. So the fact remains that I believe that if they can command 2 twos or 2 twos and a 4 or something crazy like that, I think that'll be.
I mean, Quinn he was a top 10 pick 2 years ago. He's got to be.
Wasn't he number 3?
He might have been number 3.
I think he was number 3.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're talking about a guy who's still that same guy. They're not trading him because of lack of production. They're trading him because they just need draft picks. They need to reset the entire roster, and that's going to take some time. And Quinton Williams is going to be basically aged out of his rookie contract by then. They're not going to be wanting to pay him. So get the most you can out of him now, because the longer you wait, the less teams are going to be willing to pay for him, because the less time they'll have him on his rookie deal. So, with that being said, those are our picks, our predictions, what we foresee happening over the next week. Let us know if you guys, if we're right, tag us on Twitter and say, hey, you guys called this one, or say, look, you idiots, you had no idea what you were talking about. I'll take either one of those. But I do want to move over, because there have been a few moves that have happened already that have kind of reset the landscape of where teams might be. So the first one obviously would be the Baltimore Ravens continuing to make a bevy of moves as they kind of evaluate their team and see where they're at. Obviously, they're not as dominant as they were last year. It looks like teams might have been able to figure something out about them. Nonetheless, that they are still in contention for their division. They're still in contention for the playoffs, and they are still Super Bowl contenders. They traded for Yannick Ngakoue and gave up a 3rd-round pick when he just went for a 2nd-round pick in the offseason. Not last offseason, this past offseason.
About 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 2 to 3 months ago. And I mean, I don't understand how this trade happened, but it definitely did. And you're taking that Baltimore Ravens defense with Calais Campbell, Brandon Williams, Matthew Judon, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, the names go on, and then you added Yannick Ngakoue. The Baltimore Ravens attempted very hard to acquire him from Jacksonville when he was first on the block. Then they couldn't get a trade deal done. Then when he went up the 2nd time, they tried even harder, and they were like, okay, we're willing to come to meet you where you were. And they said, we want something better. They got it from Minnesota. Minnesota obviously didn't work out. They gave their original trade offer to Minnesota. Minnesota was like, sold. So that's where they are now. They got Yannick Ngakoue 6 weeks later than they originally thought they would have him, and or I guess 7 weeks later. Now he is on the roster, and they look scary as shit.
Yeah, I like the trade for Baltimore. It makes sense to a degree, but how much better can this pass rush get? I don't understand. I know Yannick has been dominant so far this season. He's a top 3 defensive end, and he's been sacking everybody. But you already have Matthew Judon and Calais Campbell on the outside. So, like, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know who's the odd man out in this situation.
It's a rotation. You continue to rotate.
You're not going to take Yannick Ngakoue out. He's an every down guy.
No, he doesn't have to play first down. That's a big running down. Throw him on second and third down.
Unless Judon just becomes a purely stand-up pass rusher, and he plays that outside role. There's such a plethora of weapons for Baltimore. They don't even know what to do with that. We can't even figure out.
That's what we were saying for San Francisco last year, and that's what we've said for a couple of these teams. I mean, look at Tampa Bay, or you look at some of these other great defenses, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They continue to acquire pass rushing talent. You can never have too many pass rushers. That's what I'll say. You can never have too many players that can win one-on-one matchups and get to the quarterback, because that you can only block so many players on the offense. And then if you have to block 7 guys, right? If you have to throw 7 blockers out there for 4, that you're never going to complete a pass for the rest of the game. It's just that simple.
Well, the word around Baltimore is that Yannick Ngakoue isn't just a rental player. He is going to be their guy moving forward, and Matthew Judon is going to be the man left out. He was tagged this year, and they're going to just move on from him. They'd rather have Yannick Ngakoue. So, I mean,
that tells me that contract negotiations haven't gone well.
It actually just occurred to me that Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue played alongside each other last year.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even think about that. But, yeah.
Get Jalen Ramsey. Bring him over, too.
You might as well. Baltimore's got it going on. They want to keep focusing on the defense when it's not an issue. It's really this offense. And when you have a guy like Quentin Spain, who was just released by the Buffalo Bills, and your guard position is just suffering after Marshall Yonza retired, how do you not focus on that before fixing something that's not broken? It just doesn't make much sense to me why Baltimore won't fix this offense first. I'm really struggling to understand what their mindset is and how they got to this point. Yeah, you just
they did upgrade their offense. They upgraded by signing Dez Bryant.
Dez Bryant, he was signed to the practice squad, and that's really where he should stay. Wasn't it Lamar Jackson in the offseason who said, I don't want him? He said, I don't want him. We don't need him. And now Dez Bryant becomes the 3 to Willie Snead, and you've got Hollywood Brown, but is Dez Bryant really going to help this offense? No, you're a run-first offense. You're built on the run. That's what you're predicated on. How do you fix the run? You fix the offensive line.
Well, Quentin Spain looks like he's signing with the Cincinnati Bengals. That deal's almost done.
I'm good. I'm glad for Joe Burrow. I am very glad for that man. He needs some protection.
And Joe Mixon.
So once he gets back, but yeah. That's great for them. And this is a lost opportunity for Philly, for Baltimore, and there's so many teams that could use Quentin Spain. Kansas City, stop getting Le'Veon Bell. Go get Quentin Spain.
I agree with you. I agree 100%. It'll be very interesting to see how the Ravens go. This week is going to be a very big telltale sign for this Baltimore Ravens team as they face their division rival and the division leader in the Pittsburgh Steelers, the final unbeaten team in the NFL. We're going to see if that defense can hold up against the aerial assault that is Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster and Deontay Johnson and Ray McLeod and whoever else they want to throw out there, plus James Conner in the backfield. Dominant offensive line.
Did you really just go Ray McLeod over Chase Claypool?
I said Chase Claypool first.
Did you say Juju Smith-Schuster?
Yeah, that he was second. Do you not listen to me? How dare you? How dare you?
I picked and choose one to listen to.
I said Chase,
all right.
Juju, Deontay Johnson, and Ray McLeod.
I heard Deontay Johnson, who should be listed first. He is their best weapon. But then I heard Ray McLeod.
Fantasy owners get on my nerves. But I will say this offense is going to test that defense. On the other side, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is no joke. And when Baltimore has very big holes on the offensive line, they haven't really been able to get much of a run game going. And their pass game is predicated on a guy who looks like a 12-year-old in Marquise Hollywood Brown. I don't understand exactly what they're trying to get done here, because Joe Hayden is going to engulf Marquise Brown. Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to play center field all day. And the moment that Lamar Jackson attempts a pass, is going to get picked off because he doesn't know how to throw the ball accurately. And I don't understand what we're doing here with Baltimore. They're making moves to strengthen their strength, but not, like you said, they're not addressing their needs. And it gives me a little cause for concern to say, okay, Baltimore, like, it's great that you have Yannick Ngakoue, and maybe he is your guy moving forward. And, a third-round pick for a long-term contract isn't the end of the world. It's not bad at all. But what are we doing to resolve the issues now? You're in a title contention time now. These players are not going to last forever, as we have seen every other place in the history of ever.
Now, we talked about the Ravens, who they have strengths and they have weaknesses, but what about a team that doesn't have any weaknesses? What about a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have been a top 3 defense in the league and a top 3 offense in the league? What do you do? Oh, that's right. You had Antonio Brown. Oh.
No, you know what you do? If you're an opposing team, you pray.
If you're an opposing team, you say, COVID, I can't play this week.
No, you don't say that. You just give it to everybody on the Buccaneers.
You give it to the Buccaneers.
Obviously, that's a joke. We don't actually want anybody to get COVID before all you Karens run around and start screaming, oh my God, they want everybody to get COVID. The fact remains that Antonio Brown absolutely was signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As you talked about Lamar Jackson's not saying that Des Bryant wasn't needed in Baltimore, Bruce Arians said the exact same thing. And that said there was no room on his roster for Antonio Brown, mainly because he has coached Antonio Brown before. For those of you who don't know the lineage of football coaches, Bruce Arians was the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh for the Steelers under Mike Tomlin, and coached the Steelers offense, including wide receiver Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, obviously coming off his 8-game suspension, his 1-game tenure with the New England Patriots, and adding a strength to his best friend, Tom Brady, adding a weapon to, let's see, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Rob Gronkowski, should have been O.J. Howard, but Cameron Brate, Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, and LaShawn McCoy. Did I miss anybody? No? Yeah.
You could throw in that offensive line, which is amazing.
Right. Yeah. Forgot about that top 5 offensive line. Silly me.
It's an embarrassment of riches in Tampa Bay. Annoying. It's such an embarrassment of riches. Oh. And this is one of those times where you can guarantee what you see on paper is going to be what you see in real life, because Tom Brady's at the helm and he does not take any prisoners. He does not just sit back, relax. No, he is 110% all of the time. And he has worked his butt off to turn this team around. The team that started 3-2, and now they're 5-2. They're winning games. They're winning games in dominant fashion. Absolutely,
no, they absolutely are.
Like they
obliterated the Packers.
They obliterated the Packers, and they obliterated the Oakland Raiders, who have been a pretty good team this year.
Revisit what you just said. Who'd they beat?
Oh my God. The Las
That's right.
Vegas Raiders.
Gotcha. No, you're absolutely right. The former home of Antonio Brown.
Oh my
Um,
God. uh,
no, you're right. It's an embarrassment of riches to say the least. And the fact remains is that not only did they just sign the death warrant of 31 other teams, but they just gave themselves a Super Bowl ring. And for me, Tampa Bay has just exploded. They said we thought they were all in before. They are all in now. Because not only that, they tried to get Le'Veon Bell when he was a free agent. Le'Veon Bell added to Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, LaShawn McCoy. Why? What are you doing? Stop it!
the fact that they're able to do this with literally $0 on the cap. And
I mean, what I think pre-AB signing they had just over $5 million. He got I think a $2 million deal.
It was like 2 or 2.5, something like that.
Yeah. So you now cutting that number in half. They have $2.5 million of operating money. What are we doing? I feel.
So who are they trading for? Which one of these players that we talked about earlier are they trading for? What do they need? Those young corners have been absolute studs for them lately.
Stephon Gilmore headed to Tampa Bay.
I mean,
we'll throw in Julian Edelman and call it a day.
Luckily, they cannot afford Stephon Gilmore. I don't care how much money you move around; that's going to be pretty impossible. Yeah, I just don't get it. Quinnen Williams, maybe he's cheap.
Well, and Ndamukong Suh's on a 1-year deal, so might as well go get Quinnen Williams, right?
Oh man,
the fact remains is this is bullshit. And every other team, if you're a football fan and you're not a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're angry, and I'm angry. You're angry with me. We all need to come together.
No. If you're not a fan, if you're a hater of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now, you're a Chiefs fan. All right. Because they are standing in your way of another ring. And when they face off in Week 12, Kansas City is going to be humanized. They will be brought back down to this earth.
Humanized by the Las Vegas Raiders.
No. This is like part 1 of Endgame. Thanos, aka the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is going to thrash everybody. They are going to wipe half your team away, and they'll never come back. And this isn't going to be.
Here's the funny thing: there is going to be a second part to this movie, right? There is going to be Endgame because they are going to come back. Spoiler alerts if you haven't seen the fucking movie. They're going to come back and they're going to chop his head off because this is only a 1-year deal. After this, their cap is abysmal. They have nothing to do. Everybody just kind of disperses and goes into the abyss. And we never have to deal with this ever again, hopefully.
Yeah, this is something. And we kind of thought this coming in to the season, the way this roster was shaping up. And it's much better than I think anybody could have really imagined.
For sure.
Antonio Brown, he's going to get quite a workload. And I have this on here. Is this what Antonio Brown needs to earn his way back into the league? Is he going to have a future after this year in the league? I believe he will. I think that Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin just had surgery on his finger. It's minor surgery, so he'll probably be back by week 9. The same week Antonio Brown is eligible. Mike Evans a little bit banged up, but he's still playing.
I think he's coming in, he's getting a ring, and then he's bouncing. He's like, see ya.
I don't know. This is a guy that lives to compete, lives to play the game. He might be 31, 32 years old. He's
competing with the Steelers. That's who he's competing with. He's competing with Mike Tomlin. He's competing with Kevin Colbert. He's competing with the Rooney family. He is saying, I will win a ring first, and then I'm retiring, and you guys can go clap hands and sing.
What do you think would be a more exciting Super Bowl? Tampa Bay against Kansas City or Tampa Bay against Pittsburgh?
Kansas City.
Kansas City?
Shootout,
really?
Shootout.
You think that Patrick Mahomes can go out and just dot up this Tampa Bay defense?
Yes, because I think that if you had to choose a weakness for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if you had to choose one, it's their defensive backs, it's their corners.
They got a lot of speed. They
do have a lot of
young,
speed.
they're tall.
They have a lot of speed, but if you had to give Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy 2 weeks to come up with a game plan, I say they're attacking those corners. They're not going to run the ball very well. They're just going to dominate those corners. And then, when you have Patrick Mahomes, who has shown that he can throw from any arm slot, from anywhere on the field at any point in time, Tyreek Hill is it's not arguable, is the fastest player in the NFL. So it doesn't matter how fast your corners are, they're not keeping up with him one-on-one. So you're going to have to play some sort of zone or bracket coverage, and it's going to open up other things underneath. Don't forget, they still have Mecole Hardman, who's the second fastest player in the league, or something close to that. They have Sammy Watkins, who's an extremely fast receiver. Demarcus Robinson, who is a very sure-handed receiver. No, I understand that, but you're talking about these corners that aren't going to be able to cover all of these weapons. I think it'll be a shootout. I really do. I think Tampa Bay wins it easily, but it's still a shootout.
This defense is better than the Patriots have had in the last few years. And if you remember what Tom Brady and the Patriots did 2 years ago in the AFC Championship game, they just ran the clock away. They did not give the ball to Patrick Mahomes, and Tom Brady remembers that. And he has more weapons than ever to just run this clock out. Who on that defensive line for the Chiefs can stop Rojo and Leonard Fournette? There's nobody. I don't care if you're Chris Jones. I don't care. He can't do it by himself.
Chris Jones and Mike Pennell together are really good.
Have you seen Rojo run? Have you seen Leonard Fournette run? They run.
Yes, I've seen Rojo run. He got me great fantasy points.
Until Leonard Fournette came back. Yes.
Shut up.
I don't think there's a team built up like this team is. Like Tampa Bay is. They are just too strong everywhere. They don't have a big weakness. There's nothing that you can pick apart. Maybe you'll pick apart a safety, but that you might be able to pick apart an offensive lineman.
The other thing will be, can they get pressure on Brady? If they can generate very fast, quick pressure on Brady, it'd be very tough. He does not like interior pressure. And if they can generate that, no matter how good this offensive line is, it'd be very interesting. Again, it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to win. I'm just saying that if I had to bet my entire bank account, I'm throwing it on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, without a doubt. And, Tom Brady picked no better time to leave the New England Patriots than this year, when everything seemed to be unraveling pretty quickly. COVID and those off-season transactions.
You ever seen the meme of the dog that's sitting at a chair and the house is burning around him and he's like, everything's fine? That's me right now. Everything's fine. All right. We have a couple other things on the board, but I'm going to skip two of them. We can talk about them another time. I want to talk mostly about the Cardinals-Seahawks game. I think that this game was incredible. We talk about how great teams are, especially when they're undefeated at this point in the season, right? The Seattle Seahawks going into this game undefeated against a division rival in the Arizona Cardinals. Now, you would say on paper, you'd say, okay, the Seattle Seahawks are probably going to win this one. Maybe not easily, but they're going to win it. It'll be maybe a 1-2 score game. But because it's a divisional matchup, that throws a wrench in everything that you're looking at. And the fact remains that the Arizona Cardinals are more than up to the task because they see this team twice a year, every single year. Knowing how to defend against Russell Wilson, knowing how to attack this team, and understanding who DK Metcalf is, they had a plan in place to get this done. DK Metcalf, basically non-existent. The only person that torched them, Tyler Lockett. And they said, Tyler Lockett, if you can torch us, go ahead. And it also, to the benefit of the Arizona Cardinals, Chris Carson gets injured with a mid-foot sprain. They also lose Carlos Hyde to a hamstring injury. I mean, there's a whole hell of a lot of things that went the Arizona Cardinals' way in this series, in this game. And they end up giving the Seahawks their first loss in overtime. if you watch this game, it was an absolutely incredible game to watch. I mean, I had such a blast after such a shitty day. I was really excited to watch this game. Just from an NFL fan perspective, I was really excited to see what they did and what the promise looks like for the Cardinals, because Kyler Murray he looked a little shaky in the beginning, and then he got his feet settled and he was making better throws, making better reads. And then DeAndre Hopkins did DeAndre Hopkins type things. And I think, again, he scored about 700 yards and 14 touchdowns or something like that. Yeah, it's just absolutely absurd. I think they're still passing the ball.
They might be. They truly might be. Go ahead.
What? Okay. Well, so that brings me to my question, right? As great as the Seahawks team is, as much as we have revered them going undefeated into the stretch, we've seen them struggle against a couple of teams, and we saw them struggle against the New England Patriots, who don't look like they can get out of their own way. Do they need to fix some issues on this defense? Because it seems like teams that shouldn't be scoring on them are scoring at will.
They for sure need to fix this defense. I think this is a wake-up call for Seattle. They are good to go on offense. They can clearly put up a lot of points. Right. But the thing is, they have been taken advantage of in the pass game on defense. Jamal Adams has been out since, I think, week 3. He has just been dealing with a lingering issue that has kept him off the field. But even with him on the field, Cam Newton, this New England Patriots team, put up 400 passing yards on them. Julian Edelman had a career day against Jamal Adams with 180 receiving yards. I mean, this team needs help quickly. If they want to go for a Super Bowl this year, and they're running out of years because Russell Wilson's only getting older, Mr. Unlimited can only stay unlimited for so long. I think that they need to answer the question of, is this defense good to go? And they need to realize that the answer is no. They need to realize in the next 6 days that they need a guy like Stephon Gilmore. They need a guy like Harrison Smith. They need somebody in this backfield of the defense that'll be able to fix help against the pass, help stop the pass. Because this is just too big of an issue. You're gonna have teams like, if you make it to the Super Bowl, Kansas City's gonna take advantage of you. How are you gonna face up against Tampa Bay in your own conference? I mean, there's just so many teams out there with such a great passing attack that you're not gonna be able to keep up. Russell Wilson can only do so much, and if he gets stopped, I mean, you saw it this week. He was fantastic, but he had some bad throws, and they were pretty costly in the end.
Right, and you can't expect, as great as Russell Wilson is, you can't expect them to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. And the fact remains that if the defense can't stop anybody, if he's anything less than perfect, then they're going to lose the game, and that's not a good spot to be in. That's not a title contender. That is a title pretender in my eyes. So I think they definitely have to make some moves, because this is definitely a year that they can get back to the Super Bowl, get back to the promised land, and not pass it on the 2-yard line going in. I just think that they have so many different things that they can do. And like I said, I don't think Harrison Smith's going to cost them a whole hell of a lot to get. If I were them, I would double down and go get the 2 players you did just name, Harrison Smith, Stephon Gilmore. Go pair them up, add them to that defense, and go ball out, because that would be an incredible idea. They already have, KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, Bruce Irvin, whoever that you want on that, in that middle side of the field. They're maybe get a pass rusher, maybe look at Ryan Kerrigan from the Washington football team. He's going to be on the trade block. I'd like to see them add somebody like that who's kind of out of the loop on their team. Bring them in. I think that if they can make those trades happen, those deals happen, they're not giving up a whole hell of a lot of draft picks, except for Stephon Gilmore in this instance. I think that they would be in a very, very good position to be able to compete, not only for the conference, but just for a Super Bowl title as all told.
Yeah. I mean, this is all speculation right now, and we still have another 6 days until the deadline hits. So we're gonna have to. We'll do a full breakdown next week, and we'll go through what occurred and what should have happened, and how the rest of the season is gonna play out for all 32 teams, because the NFL has changed dramatically since week one, and it's going to change even more in the next week. So it's going to be a very stressful time for a lot of these contending teams, trying to see what other contenders are getting better and where your team now stands. And we'll be here to break it all down for you.
Yeah, for sure. I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, I want to reiterate the fact that over 60% of the people that watch our videos, that watch our clips, are not subscribed to the YouTube channel. Please come help support us, help support everything that we're trying to get done. The more you guys support us, the better this is going to look, the more that we can do with it, the more that we're going to be able to, possibly make this into a daily thing and make this our full-time jobs. We would love to be able to do that for you guys, so you have an alternative media source, so you don't have to go watch Stephen A. Smith and Max, whatever his face is. Or if you want to go to the other side, Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless. Yeah, that they're a real dynamic duo. That, I mean, we give it to you straight. We give it to you from the fans' perspective, and I hope that you guys understand that and appreciate that. And we're trying to do this for you guys. We really want to help you guys out. We love talking about sports. But if you guys can, please support us. Hit the subscribe button. If you would like to be notified every time we go live and anytime we post a video or a clip, hit that notification bell. Be much appreciated. Enjoy your Halloween. Stay safe, everybody. Make sure you're practicing social distancing. Make sure you're doing everything to stay safe, keep other people safe. And as I've mentioned in the beginning part of the show, please go out and vote. Please do your civic duty for this country, whether you're voting for somebody that's on the ballot, if you're writing somebody in. There's more than just the presidential election. There's other things on there. Please make sure you go out and vote and make your voice heard. With that being said, I hope you guys all have a great week. Make sure you tell your family, your friends that you love them, and peace out.